Welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Thursday morning. Thank you all for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do hit that like button that's somewhere down there. Please hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything to become a subscriber of the channel. And if you actually like what you see and hear, you can hit that bell notification, which is down there as well, to let you know when the next show is on. So please do that if you enjoy the content. So what have we got in store for you? Well, it's a brief update on the stories that have happened throughout the week. I mean, you would have, some of you may have already seen my West Ham weekly show that I do on Monday night. It's a live show. And I've already discussed the fact that David Moyes was told that his time is up at West Ham, and the strong rumours that Lopetegui is going to be his replacement. So we heard on Wednesday that apparently the contract for Lopetegui was signed on Wednesday itself. Now, he won't be unveiled as West Ham's new manager until, of course, the season's over and David Moyes is gone. I think that's the respectful thing to do. But my understanding is that it's no longer speculation whether he's going to become the new manager or not. My understanding is that on Wednesday, he did sign the contract to become West Ham United's new manager. I've already described, if you watched my West Ham weekly show on Monday night, I've kind of glossed over the sort of things, his coaching approach and the sort of things that I think he'll bring to West Ham United. And when I've been thinking more about it, for me, this is going to be an evolution of what's already in place. So let me explain. In the past, certainly under this ownership, all the managers that the current owners have ever had seem to be very different from the one to the other. You know, so when we had Avram Grant come in, he was different to the previous manager. When we had Bilic come in, he was completely different to Allardyce. When Moyes came in, he was very different to Bilic. Pellegrini, again, different, you know, and every time it felt like every time we have a new manager, we've got to start from scratch. Whereas I think under this case, with Lopetegui coming in to replace David Moyes, I think it's not that we're going to get more of the same, don't get me wrong, but I think rather than there being a revolutionary change at West Ham United, I think what Lopetegui is going to do is going to just improve, adjust, and tweak where necessary the things that we kind of got frustrated under David Moyes. And I explained in the West Ham Weekly, for example, David Moyes, we know, he loved the low block. He loved defending, having his team all behind the ball, defending on the 18-yard line, trying to be difficult to score against. Unfortunately, every time he did it, it just didn't work. Whereas Lopetegui is more of a mid-block approach. He defends in the middle half of the pitch, 3 lines of players. Making it, closing down, keeping it compact, making it difficult for teams to play through us. So that's one thing he's going to change. We're going to be hard to penetrate. We're going to be closing down space. And we're going to just make it harder. And I think, given the number of goals that we've conceded this season, it could be by the weekend a record number of goals in the Premier League. It's something that is absolutely vital, is absolutely necessary. And it's weird. And I know you're going to be scratching your heads thinking, well, how's that evolutionary? Well, if you remember when David Moyes first came to West Ham United, one of the first things that he did was to make us more compact and more difficult to beat. It's quite weird how it all seemed to unfold in the last sort of couple of seasons, where that was the mantra that David Moyes had, first things first, make us hard to beat. But that just went out of the window. So I think what Lopetegui is going to do is going to bring that back to West Ham, but he's going to do it through the mid-block rather than the low block. Lopetegui, David Moyes likes to play, as we know, a 4-2-3-1 formation. Lopetegui's preferred formation is a 4-3-3. But it is adaptable. And he will change it according to need. And he will play a false number 9 that David Moyes has kind of tried to do as well. Having Jared Bowen there, having Paqueta there this season, as the false number 9. And one of the things that will look similar in formation, not necessarily in the player in how the players are used in formation, is Lopetegui, when he plays a 4-3-3, he prefers to have his holding midfielder Alvarez sort of dropping in between the two centre backs. Alvarez will be accustomed to that because he's played as a centre back for his country as well as his previous clubs. So that 4-3-3 formation kind of morphs into a 3-4-3 because what Lopetegui does, he likes to have his fullbacks using the width of the pitch and getting further forward. And when they do that, or when we're under attack, Lopetegui tends to have his holding midfielder sort of drop in between the two centre backs to sort of form a 3. And that, of course, will also be difficult to score against. So I think there's going to be certainly a transformation in some playing style, but I think he's got a base there, Lopetegui, from what David Moyes has left, in order to build on that. He doesn't have to completely rip it apart. He can tweak it, adjust it, and make it his own. Now, what about Lopetegui's approach? I think his history speaks for itself. His overall win ratio, average win ratio with the main clubs that he's been at, including the Spanish national team, has been 54%. With Porto, his win rate was 68%. Only 9 defeats in 78 games in his time there. He didn't win anything there, but he did get sacked from there as well. When he ran the Spanish national team, his win rate was 70%. He didn't lose a game, not one game. And the reason why he left Spain, the Spanish team, was on the eve of the World Cup. It was announced that he was going to take over at Real Madrid, and the Spanish national, those people who run the Spanish team, decided to let him go. At Real Madrid, it wasn't so great. He only played a handful of games, and it was a 43% win rate, and as well as a 43% loss rate. And I think the final straw came when they got trounced by Barcelona in the season that he was there. And at at Seville, it was one of his most successful spells there. A 53% win rate, qualified for Europe 3 seasons in a row, and also won the Europa League with the Seville team that actually played against David Moyes' West Ham side in the quarterfinals of the Europa League in the first season that we were there. And then at Wolves, the win rate ratio was not great, 37%, but he came in at a time when they were struggling at bottom of the Premier League, and he actually ended up finishing just behind West Ham United by a couple of points. So I think his record is pretty decent. I think it stands for itself. Now, what about the squad? Who might he want to keep? Who might he want to let go? Who might he want to see a little bit more of before he decides what to do with the squad? We know we need a massive rebuild in the squad, but there may be players in the side that he might turn around and say, hang on a minute, I want to have a good look at you before I make a decision. And maybe some players in the squad might get a second chance at West Ham where they may not have felt that they had under David Moyes. Of course, he might decide those who want to go will go. Paqueta, destined to leave, whether it be at Man City or wherever he goes. Naifa Gerd has been rumoured to be leaving throughout the whole season. Ben Johnson still haven't managed to get him to agree on a new deal, and my understanding is he will be leaving. And then there's the players that are on loan, like Kera and Ben Rama. He would need to decide what happens with them as well. Now, interestingly, Kera, if he stays at Monaco, is likely to be playing Champions League, and Ben Rama at Lyon, they're pushing now for a European slot, maybe the Europa Conference League. So those two players may decide that they don't want to come back. One player that is staying, however, and I did talk about this on the West Ham Weekly on Monday night, was Mohamed Kudus. Now, I talked about the release clause that he's got in his contract, and I explained what I believed was the issue with that, or non-issue, to be quite honest with you. It was explained to me that players who come to West Ham, the likes of Paqueta, Kudus, etc., they'll undoubtedly have a release clause in their contracts. I also said it would be of no surprise if the likes of Jared Bowen has got a release clause, Alvarez as well maybe has a release clause as well. But what West Ham United have done as a negotiation is that the release clause doesn't come into place until, or doesn't get triggered until after 3 transfer session scenarios. So with Kudus, we've had the winter transfer window. Okay. We're going to have the summer transfer window, but it'll be after the next winter transfer window in 2025 that, and then next summer, primarily, that clubs might want to try and trigger the £85 million release clause that he apparently has in his contract. 85 million. I hope he's actually going to be worth a lot more than that. But unfortunately, that's the figure that's been rumoured. And then other players that he might want to move on himself. He might want to move on the likes of Antonio, Fabianski, Kurt Zouma, Danny Ings. These players may not fit into the kind of style that Lopetegui likes to play. He likes, for example, 3 very technically gifted central midfielders. He likes his central line, his defensive line, to push up so they do that mid-block defending, that we're not defending so deep in our own half. And he wants players, for example, that, the wide players. I think Emerson might fit in to his style of play, but Vladimir Coufal possibly is not the kind of player that will suit the kind of the style that Lopetegui wants to bring in. He might also decide that other players like Thomas Souček in midfield might not be technically gifted enough in order for him to decide to keep him on. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but there are a number of players, players who have kind of seen better days, like I said, Antonio, Fabianski, Creswell, Zouma, Danny Ings, and players that might just not fit into the mould that Lopetegui might want, people like Coufal and Souček. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with them as well. And then, as I said a moment ago, then there's players that might be given the benefit of the doubt, and maybe Lopetegui might want to have a further look at them. And players, for example, like Maxwell Cornet and Flynn Downs, who's currently on loan at Southampton. Now, I know the Southampton manager spoke, I think, on Wednesday and said how valuable Flynn Downs is to his side. And he said that, when he's been out injured, etc., it's been very, very difficult for Southampton to replace him. But I don't know. I like Downs. I think a lot of people are not too sure about him, but I like Downs, and I wouldn't mind seeing him being given an opportunity. Certainly in pre-season, there's absolutely no harm in doing that, to see whether he fits in to Lopetegui's style. And then, of course, the transfer rumours have started already, haven't they? The minute we hear that Lopetegui's going to take over, there's a plethora of players that all of a sudden are going to be joining us. Wilfred Zaha is one of the latest ones. But to me, Zaha, look, I still think he's probably got an awful lot to offer. But Zaha, is he going to be the right fit for West Ham? Is he going to be the right age? He's 31 years of age at the moment. One of the things that we've got with our squad is an aging squad. One of the ideal things that we'd like to see Lopetegui do is bring that average age down. Of course, you don't want to bring that down and sacrifice quality. I think Zaha could possibly give us something, but is he the right fit? Is he the right age? And the other thing is Galatasaray, even though they got him on a free at the beginning of this season, they might want a sizable amount of money to let him go. One of the there are other attacking players as well. And given that we need to build our homegrown talents up, there are the likes of Tammy Abraham, we've been linked to in the past, of Roma, and of course Toney. We heard, and I did a show about this, mentioned him in a show some time ago, Toney. There's a possibility that West Ham United might be the sort of club that he might end up at. And I think the latest rumours is that he might be available for something like 45 million now. His price keeps going down at the moment. I don't know how good or bad that is, but there you are. But one of the ones I found a little bit interesting, and I kind of giggled, to be honest with you, that people are now suggesting, given that Lopetegui managed Wolves, is that Craig Dawson is going to return. Well, I don't think so, because one of the reasons why, or the main reason why, Craig Dawson wanted to move away from West Ham wasn't because he didn't want to be there. It's because he wanted to be back home, back up north, to be closer to his family. And I know we all kind of quipped at the time, well, it doesn't take that long to get back to Wolverhampton or wherever it is he lives, but that's where he wants to be. So the likelihood of Craig Ballon Dawson coming back to West Ham United, I think, are pretty slim indeed. But we do have to concentrate on homegrowns, and I think Lopetegui will, if he wants a full 25-man squad, 8 of those is going to have to be homegrown. And at the moment, if you take out all the players that could potentially leave, Johnson, maybe Antonio, and a few others, etc., he'll be left with the likes of James Ward-Prowse, Flynn Downs, if he stays, Jared Bowen, Joseph Annan. So, there's only 4 there. So he's going to need at least another 3 or 4 players if he wants a full 25-man squad of homegrown players, that is. So it's going to be interesting to see whether him and Tim Steidten have been doing their homework with the homegrown players. Ironically, I can see the likes of someone like Toney or Tammy Abraham maybe coming to West Ham United. I can kind of picture that because it fits with maybe we need a number 9. We also need homegrown players. So both those players could possibly fit the mold. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Right. And what about the final thing? Well, of course, we know that it will be the last home game for David Moyes now against Luton this coming Saturday. But first of all, this whole story about, there's been a lot of malicious gossip about Tim Steidten and about, stabbing David Moyes in the back. We already heard that him and David Moyes fell out, and Steidten decided that he was going to keep his distance from Moyes and the senior team until the end of the season, etc. But there's a lot of rumour coming out that maybe Steidten has stabbed Moyes in the back a little more than just about going out looking for a potential replacement manager. Now, that's his job. We kind of already said that again on Monday night's show. This is what Steiden's been brought in to do. He is technical director, sporting director, whatever his official title is, and is not just a glorified scout for players. He was also there to look at a potential replacement for David Moyes. And it seems, apparently, that the conversations with Lopetegui have been happening for quite a few months before. If you remember, I think there's a story out and there was some photos added to social media over the last few days where Lopetegui was at West Ham at a home game back in November. So it seems that this conversation with Lopetegui has been happening for quite some time. But I think maybe it's got to be more than that. I think maybe over time, I think we're going to find out that there's probably a lot more to this than meets the eye. Is it just because Steidten was doing his job? Surely David Moyes would appreciate and acknowledge the fact that Steidten is there to do a job. And one of those jobs was to look at a potential managerial replacement. So watch out for other rumours that may come about what happened between Steidten and David Moyes over the coming months. But finally, as I was just about to say, it is definitely David Moyes' last home game. And it is an opportunity for those who want to pay their respects to David Moyes for what he's done at West Ham. I think, there's a lot to be thankful for in what David Moyes has done for when he came back the second time. Even I wasn't that enamoured when it was announced that he was coming back to replace Pellegrini, coming back for the second time to save us from relegation. But save us from relegation, he absolutely did. And not only did he do that, but he also gave us a hell of a lot of hope. Who would have thought that we would have finished 6th and 7th in the league, that we would have been in Europe for 3 seasons in a row? Because if David Moyes had come in and just stabilised us, a mid-table team, no one would have batted an eyelid. No one would have thought any different about it. And then, ironically, his standing at the club may have been, weirdly enough, a bit better with some fans, because it would have just been, thanks, David, you're a bit of an Allardyce, time for you to go now, and that would have been it. But I think, it's a bit of a weird thing, because David Moyes has created this this whole mantra about, you know, the whole thing about what David Moyes has done is he's the victim of his own success, because he gave us what we now crave. He gave us European football. He gave us a regular run of European football. And I know some people call the Europa Conference League a Tin Pot Cup. Try telling Aston Villa that if they don't manage to get through to the next stage of that competition, because it is something to laud. It is something to be absolutely, it's something that you should be absolutely proud of. And I certainly was when I was, going to all the away games and the home games, the European away and home games. And that night in Prague will always live with me forever. So I do think, David Moyes deserves our respect. Whatever you think of him, whether you like him, dislike him, or whatever, I think he deserves that. And I hope that that's what happens this coming Saturday against Luton. Of course, Luton could ruin it all and beat us. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Really much appreciated. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, do hit the like button. Do hit the subscribe button, which costs you nothing to join this, to become a subscriber of this channel. And do hit that bell notification. And I'll see you all, obviously, over the weekend. And maybe, just maybe, there might be a cheeky Friday Night Live coming back after such a long time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon.